And we are live. It's the Revved Up 906 podcast, a Detroit Pistons podcast to be exact. And I'm Hudson.
And I'm Ryan.
And before we get into episode number 44 of season two, I got to give a quick few shout outs to our sponsors and a quick few reminders. First off, I want to give a shout out to Grind Clothing Co. They are our official merch sponsor. And if you are new to the channel or haven't bought our merch yet, make sure to click the link in our YouTube bio or in the description below. That link will shoot you to Grind Clothing Co.'s website where you can check out a plethora of different design options. Also, if you want to be in the know with everything Grind Clothing Co., learn about different designs they have, different merch drops, make sure to go follow them on Instagram. And we'll soon be having season three merch coming out in the next couple weeks as we quickly approach the finale of season two. Also, if you are new to the channel, please like and subscribe. Your support reflects a lot on our work, and we just love to see you guys show up, Pistons fans show up for the greater good and talking about Detroit Pistons basketball. So make sure to like and subscribe. And if you like our podcast, Revved Up 906, make sure to hit that arrow button right below this video. That is a share button that you can post to your Snapchat stories, your Facebook pages, or other platforms like Twitter and Reddit. So make sure to share our podcast to friends, family, to let people know about our podcast if they happen to be Pistons fans. Got through our shout outs. Let's get into episode number 44 of season two. And Ryan, today we're talking about an interesting topic and because there's a lot of questions and answers that we need heading into this season. And what we want to talk about today is what's best for Cade Cunningham, what scenarios, what Pistons players that need to show up, what coaches need to make an impact, and what matchups are going to be most friendly in the Pistons' favor this upcoming season. And so, Ryan, we're going to open it up with just some first thoughts. What are some of your first thoughts on what's going to be best for Cade Cunningham this season? What's going to set him up for a possible all-star caliber season?
Well, to me, the first thing, and this is not just specifically to Cade per se, but I would say the depth at the point guard position.
Okay.
Because when he goes out, those guys are going to need to step up and pick up what he left
Oh
off
boy.
with. So, and if he doesn't do that, if not if he doesn't do that, if they don't do that, rather, then he's going to feel like, okay, I have more pressure on me coming back in after being subbed out for the last 10 minutes. Now I have to come back in and do everything that they failed to do in that amount of time that I was out. And I don't want that on Cade. Cade had enough of that last year where
Yeah.
our second lineup came in and did absolutely nothing. And then Cade sitting there having to put in the work to get us
Mhm.
back into the game. And it's like that should not be happening every single time. Outside of the rotation, you look at Jaden Ivey, who I think you're going to make note of pretty soon. Jaden Ivey needs to take a step up in his game. If he doesn't take a step up in his game, then it's like, again, Cade is relying only on himself. So the bottom line of what I'm trying to say is everybody needs to step up and do their part. Otherwise, Cade is going to have to carry the team like typically, like not typically, like usual, per se.
Yeah, I think the last couple of years, the pressure that Cade Cunningham has been put under by the Pistons organization, by fans, is a pressure that not many humans, men could handle. And I think Cade's done it pretty well, despite the losing. But I definitely do think this bench is going to have to help carry this scoring load that in years past has been put on Cade Cunningham's shoulders. And to that point, I think Jaden Ivey, like you mentioned, has to get consistent to for K to be at his best form. And that's a huge question mark heading into this season is okay, we know Jaden Ivey can give us 25 on any given night, but just the way he can give us 25, he can also give us 5 points. And we need that bottom and that top to kind of meet in the middle and give us 15 consistently or more, hopefully, to kind of alleviate the offensive end from Cade let him lean into his defensive side, get the ball moving. Because if he can get Jaden the ball on the corner, let Jaden go to work, let Cade go get his movement, try to find the sweet spots and let Jaden find him. I think this offense and this Pistons team is going to thrive with that scheme. And something to take note when looking at another organization that had a great point guard, shooting guard duo. When you look at the Golden State Warriors and a couple years ago, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, the reason why Steph thrived as a point guard, one, because his skill, but two, because defenses had to worry about where Klay Thompson was on the court. So what that shows us is when you have a point guard shooting guard duo where you have to worry about both of those guys on the perimeter, it alleviates double teams on a Steph Curry rep, because then the defense has to shift to find and know where Klay Thompson is around the perimeter. That gives Steph Curry some movement and alleviates some of that pressure as far as defensively he's receiving. So if Jaden Ivey can find himself offensively in a consistent way where the defenses have to force themselves to guard heavily on Jaden Ivey, we're going to see a Cade Cunningham that has alleviated these pressures offensively that the defense is giving him and would hopefully lead to easy offense for Cade Cunningham. So as far as that relationship, I need to see it grow. That duo needs to get better. They need to be able to pass within each other. And I think if they do that, Cade Cunningham is going to thrive this year, and that's going to be a big thing for Cade.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. Like Jaden Ivey can't just be his same old, same old. Like everybody's eyes
Yeah.
are on Cade right now to make that next jump. But honestly, Jaden Ivey needs to make that next jump so then Cade can actually officially make the next jump. It's not just everybody focus on Cade. It's not that at all. Like Jalen Duren as an example, Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, like everybody on the team needs to make a step up, because if they don't make a step up, then Cade again is having to do everything. He can't progress as a player if his teammates around him aren't progressing themselves. And that's not just Ivy, but Ivy, like you said, every good team in the NBA has had a 1-2 punch, and that's either the one and the five, or that's literally the one and the two. And in certain cases, you bring in the three with Carmelo Anthony with the Knicks, LeBron James, of course. But like the point is, there's always been a 1-2 punch. Any Pistons team, there's always been a 1-2 punch with Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars. Like that's just our bread and butter. We need to have a good guard combo in order to have a lot of success. And that's why we need Jaden Ivey to make that next step. If he doesn't make that next step, then it's kind of like, okay, we know what the issue is now. It's not Cade. Cade is no longer the issue in that situation. It's really Jaden Ivey. But I'm not trying to nitpick too much there. But the rest of the team needs to take a step up in their play in order for Cade to progress as a player and get better and do certain things that we all know he can do. But it really depends on the rest of the team in order for him to do those things. So yeah, Jaden Ivey and the rest of the guys need to step up in order for Cade to progress as a player. And really, what it comes down to is we will finally be able to see what Cade has been able to do this entire time if these guys take that next step.
And I want to make it very evident that I believe in Jaden Ivey this season in a different way than I have in past years. Because when you look at JB Bickerstaff at the helm of this Detroit Pistons team, and you look at his history, we see, and we talked about it last week, being able to make Darius Garland thrive, Donovan Mitchell going to Cleveland and thriving just like he did in Utah, never a fall off. He actually moved up, and got better during his time with Cleveland. So I think that JB Bickerstaff is going to be able to offer something that Monty Williams didn't. Obviously, Monty and Jaden didn't click all last season. There was a reason why times during the season Jaden Ivey lost minutes, and it was because that was on Monty's behalf and his decision to make. So I'm going to be interested to see if JB is going to be a guy that could rally Jaden, and they both kind of have outgoing personalities, and I just see their personalities clicking in a good way. JB is obviously a motivator, knows to say the right things, and Monty just never came to me as like a sweet talker, where Jaden Ivey, I think, needs that guy to kind of motivate him and put these good words in his brain, keep manifesting and motivating in a good process. And I think if Jaden Ivey does take a step forward, like I hope that's going to see, riches of Cade Cunningham taking that next step. Another thing, and I think Tobias and Malik Beasley need to do what we expect from the 3-point line for Cade to be at his best. So what we've seen in the past is we've seen Alec Burks, Bojan Bogdanovic with Cade Cunningham, and it just didn't work great. What we saw with Alec Burks is him and Cade never saw the floor together, so we never saw what that was going to be able to do. Cade Cunningham and Bojan Bogdanovic didn't mix because Bojan wanted to find his own shot. He didn't want Cade to assist him. Where Tobias and Malik, I think, are going to work very well alongside Cade because they are complementary players. And these two guys have been known to be players that go to contending teams because they are complementary to star players. And I think that's why Trajan Langdon is a genius picking up these two guys. Well, it's still not known what the other players are going to be, but I think it's going to work with Tobias and Malik because they played alongside star players that like to have the ball in their hands, like a Cade Cunningham. And I think if they are able to thrive from the 3-point line, Pistons are going to be able to win some big games because what have we seen the last 3, maybe 10 seasons is we aren't able to keep up with other teams' 3-point shooting. I think these two guys might be a big part of helping Cade be his best this season.
Yeah, when you think about it, like Malik Beasley and Tobias Harris have shot nearly 40% from the three in their entire career. Um, More impressive note is Tobias, given the fact that he's played as long as he's played, and at such a high level. Whereas Malik, he hasn't played as long, but he has been a big time vet in the NBA for a while now. But those two guys, like you said, they need to be hitting those threes. Tobias is obviously coming off of a team in which the 76ers, when you have Joel Embiid, who loves having the ball in his hands, then you have the young Tyrese Maxey, who looks like an absolute stud. You look at that entire roster, the shape of the team, and the long haul that Tobias was there for after leaving Los Angeles with the Clippers, and then obviously in Detroit before that. But he's played with a handful of talent from place to place. Obviously, the Clippers at that point in time were not the same Clippers they are today. They didn't have Kawhi Leonard. They didn't have Paul George. They didn't have all those guys. But then the 76ers, you had Tobias, I mean, not Tobias, you had Joel Embiid, you had James Harden for a little bit, you had Tyrese Maxey, you've had a list of different guys there. And so the evolution of Tobias with his play and having his role change from time to time. I mean, obviously coming from Detroit, he was the guy. Then goes to the Clippers, and at that point he was still the guy, but it was just more of like the Clippers aren't playing to win anything anytime soon. And then he goes to the 76ers, and then he finally gets his foot in the door and it's like, okay, I don't have to be the guy. I can just be one of the guys. And I think that knowledge and that experience, and then obviously you add in 3-point shooting in there, which greatly helped the 76ers out in multiple different occasions. I think you bring that over to the Pistons now in his return, he's going to have a laundry list of experience that he can just help and provide to Cade, that he can help and provide to all the other teammates on the roster, because Cade is going to need to learn certain things of how certain guys interact with others, like Joel Embiid, how he interacts with his teammates in Philly, and then how he presents himself on a daily basis. What's his work ethic like? I think all those things that Tobias has learned over the course of the time in Philly, he can apply to Cade. And Cade can allow all that information to come in and allow himself to take that extra jump outside of just what the day-to-day operations are, how he has been as a player, what he could be. And then same with Malik Beasley. Malik Beasley shared the same locker room as Giannis Antetokounmpo. and then even Chris Middleton, of course. But like he's been in a situation with certain guys. He shared the locker room with LeBron James too. Like he's been around a handful of top tier NBA talent and just good, great players overall. That these two guys, outside of their 3-point shooting, can bring in all that vast knowledge that they've gained over the course of their careers and help apply that to Cade. And he'll have like LeBron, Giannis, Chris Middleton, Joel Embiid, Anthony Davis, all these guys who are at the top of their class, and all the knowledge and the experiences they've had, apply that to Cade. Cade's going to make that next jump, not just because of his work ethic and and the time he's put in, or his teammates taking that next step, but he's going to learn from all these past experiences from Tobias and Malik Beasley. Throw Tim Hardaway Jr. into that mix too with Luka and Kyrie. Like throw all that experience at Cade. I think that experience alone, the just being able to learn all those things, will also help Cade to make that next jump.
So we talked about coaching a little bit earlier, but I want to take a bit of a deeper dive when talking about JB Bickerstaff and the offensive schemes he can help Cade succeed in. I found an article from lastwordonsports.com, and it talks about JB Bickerstaff, his time with Cleveland, how his last two seasons he got them to the postseason. And then it talks about Cade Cunningham underneath Bickerstaff's regime and how that may look. The article goes by starting, quote, perhaps under Bickerstaff, Cunningham can find a new footing. Since drafting Cunningham, Lowe hasn't expressed much optimism for Detroit, the sports commentator. Until now, that is. So maybe Lowe sees growth in Cunningham, which gives him some reason to believe Cunningham has much more to offer. Maybe, just maybe, the first overall pick will morph into the leader Detroit needs him to be, who they drafted. And for the first time in his young career, Cunningham will be awarded an NBA All-Star nod, perhaps one of many. Maybe it'll be his first. What bodes well for Cunningham and the Pistons is they are still very young and have time to build as a core. I mean, that's end quote, by the way. I think what's interesting and what makes me nervous about, like, oh, they're still young, they have time to build their core. Well, Ryan, eventually that's not going to be an excuse for us. That's just a side note. I think that many, voices around the league, many are interested to see what's going to happen with the Pistons this year with JB Bickerstaff, and the energy he's going to bring to this Pistons team is obviously much needed, but also this is the third coach Cade Cunningham has had. And that's a bit worrisome, but also we the last two coaches we had, Wayne Casey, obviously Monty Williams, both low energy guys, both very calming presence. And at the time when we had those two coaches, we thought that was going to be a great thing for this young Pistons team. But maybe they need a coach to match that young energy they have. And I think Bickerstaff is going to be this guy that hopefully surges some energy into this young Pistons team and is a motivator. And we noticed that in his time with the Cleveland Cavaliers, we mentioned it, a lot of point guard play, a lot of the ball running through them. A lot in the past offenses from the Pistons these last couple of years. Cade brings it up the floor, gives it to the second best scorer, and then they ball hawk it. Basically, they ball hawk it, and if it doesn't work out, they give it to Cade. We saw that with Bojan Bogdanovic. That we've seen that at times with Jaden Ivey. We saw that with Jeremy Grant. Those types of things. And so I'm hoping with Tobias Harris, not Donovan Mitchell, but rather Malik Beasley, we may see a different offense that JB Bickerstaff can implement that may be shocking to this young Pistons team, may take them a while to get to learn, but that's why they're in this league. They're smart enough to take on these challenges. And I think that this Pistons team needs a whole revamp of their offensive schemes and what their game plan is going to be heading into games. Because if we look at the personnel, the coaching is not just different, but this roster is looking a lot different than what we started with at the beginning of last season. I mean, this team is going to need to revamp everything in every aspect. And I think JB, Trajan are and coming into a completely new regime from the front office level to the coaching and then to some of these veterans, it's going to be a very different organization that we're used to as Pistons fans. So I'm hoping that JB understands what he's walking into with Cade Cunningham. In the press conference, he claimed to know what Cade Cunningham had to offer, but I really hope he takes this opportunity and doesn't spoil it like Monty Williams. As far as Ryan, as far as like offensive schemes and sneaky players that may get the ball a lot that we're not expecting, obviously we're seeing Jaden Cunningham going to have the ball a lot this season, but who's maybe that third player that can step up to be that guy that gets a lot of touches? Is it a veteran like Tobias Harris, or is it a guy coming off the bench like a Bobby Clintman or a Ron Holland? Where's your head at?
I actually think it's Jalen Duren.
Okay.
Just because you go off of last year and the time that Cade was out for that stretch there, and you had the matchup against Denver as an example. Duren was just he was going coast to coast with the ball in his hands. He was showing off his ball handling. He was showing off his jump shot. He hit a couple threes in that game, which was shocking. But he can do that. But like he was showing us stuff that we had never seen before. But that's also because Monty never had a game plan. And if he did have a game plan, it was like, all right, Cade, do whatever you want. If it doesn't work, give it to Bojan. If that doesn't work, give it to Alec Burks. If that doesn't work, give it to someone else. Like that was just the tumble of things happening. Whereas we never saw, except for that stretch of games, we never saw Jalen Duren go to work and be everything that he can be and not just limit him in this little small bubble. And that little small bubble is just, okay, Duren is a beast in the paint. That's a small bubble. But I think you can enlarge that a little bit because you go back with Bickerstaff and you go back to Cleveland, which is his previous stop, of course. But you look at his big play. You'd have Jared Allen, who was in a bubble before, but with Cleveland has, and I would say enlarged the bubble. And then same with, I can't believe it. Evan Mobley, Evan Mobley, same thing. Evan Mobley, granted, we've always known that he can shoot from deep. He has good ball handling. He can pass, has a high IQ. He can do this and that and then more. We've always known that. But under Bickerstaff, he was able to expand on that. Same with Jared Allen. He was also able to expand on that. Every single big that has come out of the Bickerstaff system has been able to expand their game to more than what it ever has been. Because Jared Allen in Brooklyn was really just, all right, I'm getting the rebound and that's it. He was never looking to score. Whereas Cleveland, Bickerstaff is looking for him to score. Evan Mobley at USC, looking to score, obviously. Then comes to Cleveland, he's no longer necessarily looking to just score. They're looking at him, okay, can you facilitate the offense for us? At times when Donovan Mitchell is getting doubled, at times when Darius Garland can't be in the game, we're going to look to you, and you're going to provide our offense. That's the kind of stuff that I think Bickerstaff is going to apply to Jalen Duren this season, which in return, if you allow all the focus to go on Duren, who is most likely going to be in the paint, that opens up the wing presence. That opens up Ivy to fill those lanes. That opens up Cade to work around the perimeter and work and get as soon as he touches the ball, boom, there you go, kicking it out to the corner for a three with like Tobias Harris, Malik Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., etc. I think if you can get Jalen Duren to hit another level with his game, which I would expect it to happen just because of Evan Mobley and Jared Allen with Cleveland and the Bickerstaff experience. If you add that third dimension with the paint, that really sucks the defense down because you're not wanting to give up those easy points. If you suck that defense down, it's going to open up the rest of the court. And I think that's where Cade just goes to work. And I think Cade progresses even more if Duren is able to fill those needs.
The last area I kind of want to talk about to set up Cade to be his best self. We haven't talked a whole lot about the coaching staff and who Bickerstaff brought in as assistants. And we may have mentioned it briefly when JB originally came out with the article talking about who he's going to be bringing on. But some of the coaches that he brought on are well-known coaches. Luke Walton, Sidney Lowe, Fred Vinson, Vitaly Potapenko, Kevin Burleson, Jerome Allen, and John Estes. And he kept on and retained Jarrett Jack and Steve Scalzi. So I know Luke Walton's kind of a name that like people either love him or hate him. I think I'm mixed on him, but I do think players appreciate former NBA players being on the coaching staff, experiencing the speed themselves, certain plays they've seen years and years. And then also Fred Vinson had a very good career with the New Orleans. He had 14 seasons there, and he just left New Orleans to take this Pistons job. So I think it'd be cool having a fresh eye like Fred Vinson as one of his top assistant coaches, as a guy that was with a team for many, many years, really put himself and put all of himself into that organization. I'm really excited about that. Some of the guys Monty Williams brought in were journeymen that had been all over the NBA with so many different teams year to year to year. Monty Williams seemed just to kind of throw it together. But with JB Bickerstaff, he's bringing in these guys that aren't journeymen. They're loyal. They put themselves into the organization and they really try to put the years in to develop some of these guys. So I just think it's kind of impressive who we brought in. Ryan, can you maybe fact check me? Is Jerome Allen a former player? Why does that name sound so familiar? Is he a former player?
I'm pretty sure. I could be
Sounds
wrong.
so familiar. Sounds
No,
so
yeah, he
familiar.
is. He is a former player. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so
And then,
he was a former player, but I want to give a shout out to somebody um
yeah,
that Bickerstaff did bring in, and that is um Kevin Burleson, who is Nate Burleson's brother. So I think that's really
okay.
cool. I think that's a cool nod. Just the fact that you had Nate play with the Lions for such a long time. And then you have Kevin Burleson coming in, and it's just a cool fun fact.
Yeah, totally. That is kind of cool. Just Detroit, family almost.
Oh yeah.
So that was just something I kind of wanted to bring up just because, last year when we, hired Monty, we did a whole episode on the coaches, and maybe that's to come. We can maybe deep dive on some of the individual assistant coaches, but it seems like he's brought on guys with high pedigree and guys that can really put themselves into the Pistons organization. Luke Walton's the only one that really has been everywhere, basically, as far as head coach, assistant coach, all these types of things. So I think that these coaches are going to be coaches that really give their all to Cade Cunningham. And I think that's something we're going to need to see. We need a coaching staff that's around that really tries to develop this organization. And I hope these coaches realize the opportunity they have. They have the opportunity to make Detroit their home, a beautiful city, beautiful people, just amazing community, while also rebuilding a historic franchise in this NBA. I really hope they know the opportunity they have at hand in the talent this Pistons team has. And I think a Fred Vinson, it for us as Pistons fans, that's really cool to see that he jumped ship from New Orleans, obviously had his family based there for 14 years, and then comes to the Pistons almost like he believes in this organization. I think that's impressive to see a guy jump ship after 14 years, that loyalty, and then it seems to be that he believes in this Pistons organization. Ryan, any last thoughts before we wrap up today's episode?
The only thing I really have to say is the coaching staff that was brought in, fantastic. Obviously, Luke Walton has not been liked by many franchises, but he's a great assistant coach. Maybe not a head coach, but a great assistant coach. And then as far as the roster goes, Langdon and Bickerstaff have put a roster in place where we should see progression with Cade Cunningham. And I want to be proven wrong with that because I mean I think I'm accurate in saying that he should progress this year, and you would say the same thing. I think a
Oh yeah.
lot of people would be saying the same thing, but I think it's going to happen, and I think the what's been established and put in place is going to benefit and work out. Obviously, we're not going to be contending for a championship next year or this upcoming season, rather. It's really upcoming. But we're at least going to be stepping in the right direction to where we should be going, rather than taking a step back the last couple of years with Monty Williams and Troy Weaver. Like they sunk us. We just plummeted with them. But with the Bickerstaff hire and the guys we brought in to help Cade out, that I think that progresses him, and I think we become better in the end because of that.
That will do it for episode number 44 of season 2. Make sure to like and subscribe. And also, if you haven't yet, follow us on Instagram. We post daily clips, videos, all the things on Instagram. So make sure to follow us on Instagram, link in bio. We will see you guys in next week's episode. Peace.